Hello, welcome all, welcome one to the Minds of Moria podcast. I'm your host, Michael. I'm here with Trey
Hello.
and Andrew.
Hello.
Obviously, since this is our first podcast, first part of this is going to be introductions. So, we're going to talk about when we were first introduced to the game, play styles that we like, armies that we like. And I can start first because I will take the responsibility of finding this game first. I've always loved Lord of the Rings. I've always loved strategy games. But in COVID, my grandma brought over a box of Lord of the Rings models, and it happened to be the 2003 Return of the King set. So Andrew and I found that out, and for like a year, we played just the 2003 first edition rules, which was hysterical, and we never used heroic actions, and it was fun. And then like a year later, we realized, wait, there's a whole new edition. Oh my goodness, there's so many different types of models. And then we got competitive because we introduced Trey to the game, and he started absolutely demolishing us. So we were like, all right, we got to step up our game. But for me personally, I think I attended my first tournament 3 years ago, but I haven't been to that many tournaments really. I took a break before the new edition because high school got busy, but I'm in my senior year, which is like easier for some reason. But hopefully I've gotten way more competitive and studied more. But I'm hoping to go to 4 tournaments in the next 4 months. So I love the game. It's balanced, it's awesome, and the strategic depth is pretty insane. So that's about me. Trey, you wanna go into
Okay.
your
My name's
introduction?
Trey. I've been in the game for just over 3 years now. And those two, Andrew and Michael, introduced me to the game. And pretty much the first few games, I had no idea what I was doing, so I got clobbered. And then I was like, I don't like getting clobbered, so I went, read the rules, learned the game, and got, some would say, pretty good at it. And so throughout the last few years, I've attended a bunch of events. Um, Specifically, the first few years were more of just like played decently, placed well. And then this past year, I got a Texas Grand Slam, won all of the GT 100s, won the league, and came third at Nova. So that was quite fun. And so this year, we're looking to have fun again.
Definitely. What type of armies have you played, or what was your favorite army to play?
Favorite army's hard. I would say probably just a lot of kiting style lists. I really like the kiting style. I also play heavy engage lists. Like I'll play everything. Like I was playing in the last previous editions, I was playing Men of the West with Eladin, Elrohir, Aragorn, and just a couple of troops, and just Hero Hammer, and that was super fun. This edition, I played a lot of Wolves of Isengard, Rise of the Necromancer, Khazad Dûm with only Dwarf Rangers, lists like that. And then to Nova, I brought Lake Town with Gwahir, which is very fun. So those are the kind of lists I like. And the Grey Company. I love that army.
Many a time I've been shot off the board by Trey, so yeah. All right,
Okay,
Andrew.
Andrew.
Uh, hello, I'm Andrew. I started playing the game same time as Michael. I don't know. I'm not as well learned in the game as these two people because I don't play it as much as them. I've been to like a few tournaments here and there, and then after I went to college, I like haven't really played it until I come home for like breaks or whatever, and then I come play and get clobbered by both of them. So, yeah.
Yep, that's fun. What armies have you played? What's your
Well,
favorite?
my favorite army is Depths of Moria. I love the Balrog. I've always loved it. And then I don't know, Last Alliance is growing on me, and so is Fornost. I don't know why, but those two, I like
Yep,
those a lot.
very strong armies, and we'll be talking about the day because our main topic
Yeah.
that we're gonna dive into is about the meta. So looking at what the meta was 2025, and now that we're in 2026, our predictions and counters to the potential meta. So
Yep.
if we want to start by talking about the first couple months of the edition, where it was just the 6 scenarios, just Armies of the Hobbit, Armies of the Lord of the Rings, what armies did y'all see do well, or specifically in our DFW area, do particularly well, or you saw a lot?
Okay, first off, I just want to intercede a bit. When Andrew says he comes back and gets clobbered, he's been the only player that has consistently beaten me in the last year with like the lists I keep winning tournaments with. He will consistently just show up and just randomly beat the tar out of me. So when he says he gets clobbered, it means sometimes he's the one doing the clobbering. Well, let's make that clear.
Yeah, when the Balrog will go Balrog when he rolls sixes like no one else.
True.
Okay, so first 6 months. I mean, honestly, I think the first 6 months were the time to run all cav lists. And so we actually did see quite a few all cav lists around. So we saw some Riot out, taking some first and seconds, which they were still playing well towards the later end of the edition, but not to quite as much great success because all of the scenarios that do not require dismounting to pick up or dig
Yeah.
up scenarios were not in the edition. So the first half of the year, I really liked playing all cav. Yeah, I still do, which we will talk about later. But I think all cav was prominent, especially here. But we have a lot of old school Rohan players, so we did see a lot of that. We saw Balrog. We've got a couple diehard Balrog fans. We saw a bit of the Eagles, which was fun to see. And most of our events have been around 600 to 700 points. So it wasn't like the 500 points where it's super oppressive. So it hasn't been like the dominating force where everybody hates the Eagles players. Um, I mean, other than that, we've seen a good spread. We've seen the reclamations of Osgiliath. We've seen our share of AOL, of White Hands, of all of these different things.
Yeah. I'm happy. I was fortunate. My only tournament in that first 6 months was in April, and it was 800, and there were no Eagles. So praise the Lord, because Eagles are nasty. Um, but yeah, I feel like those first six scenarios were very, like you talked about with Cav, very heavy mobility lists, and I think we'll get into this more. But this edition really kind of seems to favor hordes, which is something that I ran a lot last edition with a lot of Morannons. But like White Hand or Usurpers or even Depths, which is technically a horde, even though you just have a bunch of goblins, seem to do very well. So yeah, it's interesting. But I think another thing that's weird is those first six scenarios that were introduced. And I think that
Yeah.
really hurt the gameplay because some of those scenarios are fine, but
Some of them are good. They got overplayed on the good ones, and then the more mediocre ones just got hated, I think. And I think this is the issue that we saw in the last edition when it was just the original 12, was it, in the rules book. After a while, people started hating all of the ones that weren't top tier. And then the other ones, it was fine. But then you would get to a tournament, and any of them that weren't like the best scenarios, if they ever got called, everybody would be like, dang it, why am I here? I hate this. And I feel like that's what comes up when you see Reconnoiter or Destroy the Supplies. Even though, like, personally, I love Reconnoiter, it's just because of the way that they were just so played. And you were going to a tournament. If it's a 2 day tournament, you're guaranteed to play each of these scenarios. So if you don't like the scenario, you are playing it regardless. And I think that just wasn't helpful for a lot of players. And then to the people who were annoyed by a lot of the new setups, also the way that they set up and chose half of the scenarios to be like the banner scenarios,
yeah.
which personally I don't care. I didn't take a single banner in the first half of the year because of that reason. Everybody's like, you need a banner to win. So I was like, I'm taking a banner. I'm not taking a banner. Um, and so it's just there was a lot of things like that where I can just see it just irking all of these players. And so I think that was where it just wasn't helpful for the game.
Yeah, the banner VPs were something that was very big because also I think some of that has changed. At the tournaments we run, it's at least some of the more recent ones have been double VPs for a major. But I mean, there was that
Mhm.
one story at the beginning where the someone was playing a
Yeah.
Mumuk and
Yeah.
he had a banner,
Oh,
his opponent didn't, and he
yeah,
ran over his entire army with a Mumuk and won. You're like,
yeah.
mm. So yeah, it was very banner heavy. But also, like, some of the scenarios that didn't favor these massive mono counts, like Contest of Champions or Lords of Battle specifically, weren't there. Like, Andrew and I had a match of To the Death where we
Mhm.
tied, but I think it would have been
Yeah.
very different if it was Lords of Battle or Contest or something. So, yeah, it was
Hmm.
interesting.
And
So,
post that 6 months, what have we seen pop up, arise out of the depths with the army lists and with the matched play guide?
Cribane. Please no Cribane. No, I feel like you started to see a lot more variation. I really like how it's done. There's 24 scenarios now, and a lot of them are very different. The new scenarios I really like, and personally, it would be super cool if those were the first six that they released, because that would have been super
Yeah.
fun to play just those new six scenarios. But you see armies like Army of the White Hand dominating at Articon, but also Men of the West, weird Gandalf the White, Aragorn build dominating there, and also at Nova, which Trey and I were at. But also like Usurpers as well did well. And then there's some armies that are popular but aren't exactly fantastic, like dragons. And any
Yeah.
doubles tournament or any giant tournament, so you see a lot of dragons. So
Hmm.
I don't know. I feel like there's been a lot more variation.
I think a lot of it depends on the way the tournament is set up. If we're talking about in a veto scenario situation, most armies in the game are playable and can be very, very competitive. I really hate it when competitive players sit here and say, "Oh, look, there's only like two or three armies that
Hmm.
are actually competitive." And they're right in the regards of, yes, they're kind of tweaked in a balance that helps them. Like White Hand. The Crebain are over, they are way over. Their value is more than what you're paying for them, right?
Yeah.
In Men of the West, you're taking these basic 9 to 10 point troops, and then you're getting Fearless for free on all of them, and you're getting Fight 5 for 1 turn on all of them, right? So, and then also Dominant 2 within range of heroes. So you're taking these, in those kind of lists, you're taking good solid troops and you're giving them more value than what you're paying. Other lists don't do that. But to me, all that is one little thing. Ultimately, yes, it is a dice game. Skill is heavily involved though. So obviously the players that are very, very skillful will be winning. The issue is also those very skilled players tend to be very competitive. And so they
Hmm.
look and they go, oh, look, Men of the West, you're getting so much good value on your troops. Look, Crebain, such good value. Oh, look, all of these other lists. Army of Erebor, look, your backline gets +1 to wound for free. Like it's just they go and they look, these are good value troops, and
Yeah.
you're getting things for free. And
Yeah.
then they go, that can help me win. That is where we see all these people saying these are the competitive lists. And that's what I've been trying to do this year is not to take those lists and still be able to win because I heavily believe that it is the skill of the player that ultimately decides. And these little things, they're so little that that's where the luck comes in. Like a dice roll can ruin your Fight 5 for a turn, right? You could be rolling sixes when you're Fight 4 every single time with your 2 ranks deep and your banner from Aragorn. Then you go Fight 5 for a turn and you roll a 2 high and lose the fight. It's like sometimes your bonus doesn't do much. Or like maybe you go into a game and Aragorn gets shot out or killed super early, and so all of a sudden your fearless is completely gone. Right? Dice can happen, and you can lose all of those really good buffs super quickly. You could randomly run a Crebain into 4 dudes and have it just one-shotted, right? Which obviously getting into 4 dudes is obviously a mistake if you're getting your Crebain into 4 dudes. But
Yep.
needless to say, or even a charging hero, 1 turn can just start chopping down Crebain if they get lucky on dice, right? So that's where a lot of it comes down to is just they're deemed competitive because these competitive players say they are because they see
Mhm.
these little buffs. So that's where
Yeah.
it's just like last edition, we saw all these competitive players taking all these alliances with like the best value troops. It was the same concept. This edition, like last edition, themed pure lists were much more rare. This edition, they're taking the equivalent from last edition of the few lists that give them those tweaked bonuses.
Yeah, and that's something I think that's great about this game is, yeah, it's dice, and I think this edition especially, yeah, your lists are, but I think like only 10% of the game really matters to your list. It's how you play that list that really
Hmm. Yeah.
matters. But where I think those good lists come into hand is like if you have two players of equal skill and you take one list that has better buffs than the other, that's where it starts to play. And that's where, like at Articon Masters, where you saw all these white hands because that was the best list taken by the best player. But I
Yep.
think something that's interesting too, between like as we're starting to realize 1 year into the new edition, especially from a lot of the competitive players and podcasts that I've listened to, is like they're starting to complain like it's kind of boring in some senses because basically all the profiles had a slight tweak from the new edition, but most of them are the same. Like Aragorn does the same thing, he's just a little bit better in how he does it. There's not really anything new, which is I think where some of those people are complaining, but like personally for me and for Andrew, and I know for you, Trey, because you purposely try and run lists, there's so much there and so many options to run that I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
it is so strong and so much better this edition with all the new scenarios and all the different types of army lists as well.
Yeah, and I would say that goes right back to my point of these competitive players are going, look, these are the two or three lists that are very competitive. These are the only two or three lists I'm going to play. Therefore, they are getting bored from running the same two or three lists
Yeah.
because what else has the same overpowered nature that is better by the maths than these other lists? And that's why they're
Yeah.
bored. Because me, I still have ideas for everything. I was just on a cons train for like a month, and now I'm working on another army. It's just like I love playing the game. I love playing all these different armies. It comes down to how you play the list, not the list itself. The list doesn't win you the game.
Yeah. And I think some lists that are more competitive are fun too. Like Andrew, if you want to talk about your experiences when you ran Men of the West at the recent tournament, like the comparatives of
Oh,
how that list played to your style.
I liked it. It played well with my style. I need to learn the rules of my characters before I go to tournaments. I learned that. That has made me lose a lot of games that I should have. But yeah, I liked Men of the West. It played well. I think I play better when I have like either a big hero or monster in the list. I think monsters are my like I love to play with monsters and I think I know how to play with them. But yeah, Men of the West, the list. Yeah, I think it played good. I love Aragorn, especially with Andrew. War is too good, yeah. And then Guahir was so good.
And
Amber.
how many attacks does Gwahir have again, Andrew?
Oh yeah, he has three now. I forgot about that. He has three. Yeah, the list was like Aemir, Guahir, and Aragorn, and then troops. It was a good list. Probably would switch Aemir out for Legolas because I had zero shots, and that it's not that it affected me that much, but like the threat of shooting is probably better than Aemir. Aemir really didn't do anything. Yeah, but like that list played well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know.
Bit of a lore story here. Andrew played the first three games of that tournament with Gwahir at two attacks. So
Yeah.
and there was another game I played him in tournament with Midas Morgul versus Fornos. And he
Mm,
forgot Anna's courage, so I was winning
mm.
him on fives. I should have been winning him on sixes, and I ended up tying that game. So yeah, that
Yeah,
was
because
fun.
you shanked Aener in that game.
Yes, that was fun. But I feel like Men of the West is also kind of a fun list because yeah, you have Aragorn, he's kind of fun. You can take Gwahir and Eagles, which are fun, but I feel like compared to a lot of lists, it does have some flexibility in how you build it. Because we've
Yeah.
seen three different types of builds do well. We've seen like Aragorn on a horse with like Legolas and a captain or Gimli. You've seen Aragorn and Gwa here and Legolas normally, and that list as well, or a captain in there as well. And then the one that did really well, Articon and won Nova was Gandalf the White and Aragorn, which is a really interesting pick, but it worked out well because they build off each other. But I think that's also why it does well, is because it's a fun list to play, and it has some rules and
Hmm.
is a little bit more competitive on that side as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't know how
Hmm.
much Andrew enjoyed it, but it was a nice refreshing break to see that. So
Yeah.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, even you at Nova, you faced what, three men of the Wests? Two or three?
I think I faced two. One, they were both
Yeah.
very different. I faced
Yeah, that's what I'm
Aragorn,
saying. Is it's
Gwahir.
just like,
Yeah, Aragorn, Gwahir, Legolas, and then Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli. Um, and I did one well against one and not well against the other, but it's fun. One thing that I feel like is underrated about that list is the dominant two is scary. It's less of it's more powerful, but also it just brings like this fear. Like you're like, ooh, I don't want to play hold ground. I vetoed hold ground when I played that list because I didn't want them to get all that done too. But yeah, it's an interesting list. I enjoy playing. I played a tiny bit with it. I enjoy playing against it, but it is quite competitive.
Yeah.
Yep. Men of the West is a top tier list. Trey, you had some experience with it at Nova, yes?
I played against it once at Nova, which was the Gwahir build, which I think is what is considered the more competitive build at like 700 points or higher. Which at 750 or higher, you take a Legolas, Aragorn, Gwahir, and a bunch of dudes. At 700, you take a captain, Aragorn, Legolas. Or I guess at 700 you could take Legolas, you just don't get a physical banner. So people who like the physical banner take the captain instead. So I was playing against the captain, and I did beat him, which it was a crazy game. I mean, it was Maelstrom deployment, and I spent 4 points of might on deployment. So I was down might against he didn't spend any of his 8 points of might plus his free every turn with Aragorn. So he way outmighted me on the table. And more importantly, most of that might came off of Gandalf. And so Gandalf didn't have any might for channeling, which is very important for Gandalf the Grey now that his magic sets are not that good. And so I got one spell off the entire game. Like my dice rolling was horrible. So I was just throwing like 3 dice and still failing spells. So like that sucked. But my guy here was able to tear through his line. I was able to keep him at bay, keep Aragorn from to heroic striking every turn, since I could barge off with Guai into him every single turn. So his Aragorn didn't do a whole lot of damage. In the end, on the last turn, he broke me by 1 model. On the same turn, I quartered him. That same turn, he had also barged Guai and threw him up on top of a building so that he could see my guys hiding behind it in range of an objective. The issue was the building was 3.5 inches tall. So his Guai was out of range. And so I won that objective, winning me the game like 11-7 or something. So that one was a good end for Nova, but a very tough matchup.
What scenario did you veto?
On that one, I think I vetoed Hold Ground. Yes, I
Yeah.
vetoed Hold Ground. And then he vetoed either Heirlooms or I think he did. Yes, he vetoed Heirlooms because he did not like Heirlooms because it was
Yeah.
luck. It was who's Guai found it first, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, in either of the other 2 scenarios, we can spread out. I've got the Fearless, you don't. I'm Gondorians, you're Lake Town Militia. I should be able to beat you all over the board, even without being a death ball like my list normally is. And so I was like, that's fine. I've got 10 more bodies than you do. I've got more hit threats through Tariel, Legolas, Tariel, Gandalf, and my Guai here. And my troops, they're fine. Like I actually really rate Lake Town Militia, contrary to common belief. And hey, it worked. I got third place at Nova. So,
Yeah. I'm
but
sure Trey will talk about his light shields a little bit later. But another list, interesting enough, that was not really present at Nova, but has been quite dominant everywhere else, is White Hand, which is interesting because in the tournaments I've been to DFW, there's not been many White Hand, but obviously we're seeing it everywhere else, mainly due to the fact that it's just super competitive and the Crebain are really powerful. So
yeah, I think a lot of the issue with the DFW is some of the guys are just too nice to take it.
yeah,
Like some of the better players, like Kobe, he's like, I have it. I love the list, but I'll just run Rohan instead. It's like, come on, just bring it out. Let me have some fun. I want to play against some White Hand. So he'll bring it up for practice games. So if you want to play against White Hand, he will happily bring out his White Hand.
mm, yeah, noted that. I think interesting enough, like a lot of it's very popular in Britain and Australia, but I feel like it hasn't too hit the US meta yet.
I think the US is very popular up north. So from my experiences, from what I've heard, it's very popular up north. And the GVHL, at least in the last half of the year, it kind of started dying out. So it's still
Yeah.
popular. And again, for events where it's like, oh, you need to roll, and it's not veto scenarios, it is a very good list.
Yeah.
I still don't think it's like the top dog, which is contrary to a lot of people, but I still don't think it's that good. Like, I don't think it's top tier. I don't think it's
You
the best list in the game.
Yeah, you do run a lot of lists that counter it well. I think yeah, White Hand's gotten to the point where everyone's like, this is just so like it's good, but it's not fun to play anymore
Yeah.
as much. So
Yeah.
and then well obviously what the FAQ next month does, I know a lot of people are hoping Crebain's wounds or something gets nerfed, but I've never seen a GW publication that's taken down a statistic on a profile, so if anything it's just gonna go up points, unfortunately, I think.
I would actually love to see it stay where it is at 40 or 50 points, because I actually really love the role it fills of just being able to guarantee stop a hero for a turn. Like that can be so crucial. So like I actually would probably prefer it, because here's the thing, it's still probably worth it to take at least 2.
Yeah.
Like they just add such a good utility that they're worth it, even if they're 40 or 50 points. But they're not going to be spammed, and their rules aren't going to be as oppressive because they're actually paying for it.
Yeah, I don't want to play against 14 Creban again. That's not fun. But yeah, 12-inch fly is and has always been very good.
Yes.
Another list that's been very popular and has done very well due to some rules is Depths of Moria, and we have our resident Depths of Moria player, Andrew. You want to talk about that list for a minute?
Yeah. Well, Depths of Moria, my favorite list. It's a really good list. You always have to remember your drum bonuses. That's very important. And then, of course, you have the Balrog with his free heroic combat. He can kill if he's rolling good. He can kill most things. And then, obviously, his whip it's actually a very useful tool. Sometimes I feel like I've watched people play it and they just sometimes they don't play it properly. A lot of them play it as like a throwing weapon that you use when you go into combat. But I like to play it where I put my goblins in front of him and pick out like one model that I really want to kill, and then I whip them and pull them into combat with me while so like I can isolate that and then kill that. And then later I can like break open my lines and run for it. And then the goblins in that list, I take some prowlers, but like the goblins really are there just to die. It's
Yeah.
I haven't played it with the Watcher in the Water. I need to. I want to see how that runs. I feel like it would be interesting.
Yeah, Watcher Borrow combo does really well at high points. I think one thing I think you do really well with the Borog is because he got 8-inch move and that 8-inch whip, your heroes are not safe if they're 16 inches away, which is tricky. And Andrew has beaten both Trey and I. I've played against the Borog so many times. But yeah, that list is very good. I think also the nerf to strike, that's really hard to get to full
Yeah.
10 now.
Mhm.
I
Because
would I would I would still say the best thing in the list is simply that banner effect, simply because, like you said, your goblins
Yeah.
are there to die slowly. The thing is this is like one of those other bonuses I was talking about. It takes a average troop that is actually quite good for what you're paying for a goblin, but then it shoves it through the roof by giving it everybody a free banner effect. Like that
Yep.
is I would say having a banner effect always on your troops, it's essentially giving them a second attack. Or if they have a
hmm
shield, a third attack. It's like there's so much value that comes out of that. So it's just another one of those things that's like you're getting a good value troop and you're getting a buff that makes it even better. The issue is the depths of Moria, I would say, is better than White Hand and stuff because you have that. Then you can conserve VPs so well because one, wounding the Balrog is very difficult. Two,
Yeah.
you have to wound him 5 times to be able to break the army. So it's just like the points conversions of just like it can conserve so much points is just crazy. That's what
Mhm.
makes the list so good.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
also like I also like well he's 8-inch move and then you have your captains. If you call a march and then whip and then combat, he's
I've
moving.
I've been burned from that before. I think my hero was like a good 24 inches away. Andrew calls a march, whips a regular dude into combat, doesn't kill him, combats off of the dude, and my hero kills him. I was like, what? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's strong. And I think that's something interesting about the new edition, like the overlying buffs. Like I feel like every army is like, how can you buff a troop? I think orcs are a great example. Like Minas Morgul gives them Blades of the Dead. Angmar gives them Terror. Other lists like Ugluk Scouts, they get +1 to wound. Like it's just laying these buffs, which we kind of saw a little bit last edition with the Dragon Emperor, where it was just how good can you make your troops with all these buffs.
yeah,
But I
Mhm.
feel that really was honed in this edition, especially in depth. So
which part of the reason is I think a lot of the complaints that we saw last edition going to the rules designers were the game is just slow. And so a lot of what the
mhm.
rules designers were seeing is people are getting like over in Britain, we here, you would not believe it how fast we play comparatively. Like we
We play
play,
fast.
especially I play a very, very fast style of play, which part of it is I've just learned that because I play a lot of kiting lists. I will finish a move phase in about 2 minutes normally because it's just like, and that's with like 40 models. It's just like I've learned to move very quickly, efficiently because it's just like I need to get as many turns in as possible. So I would hate playing over in Britain consistently because it would be like I just wouldn't be able to run the lists I do run because it's just I would be able to use my play styles and I would finish half the game and then the game would be up, right? And that's also why White Hand is was so good specifically is because at a slower pace, that list also conserves points. And so when
Yeah.
you've got a list that conserves points, you can get a few points, it's conserving, and you time out, you're going to win, right? And so I think a lot of it just comes down to time management. And so what the game designers saw was, oh, a lot of this has an issue, which funny enough, they didn't fix it, obviously. But one of the things they did was they gave a ton of reroll ones, a ton of +1 to wounds. Like this edition has way more +1 to wound than any other edition. Like even with
So much.
AOL, they didn't just give it +1 to wound at the front line. This edition, the back line also gets +1 to wound. It's like they just threw +1 to wound everywhere. Hobbits now can get +2 to wound consistently. It's like crazy. They're just putting killing power everywhere so games go through quicker.
Yeah. That's and we might talk about hobbits a little bit later, but yeah, they're a good army list. Andrew, out of curiosity, because a lot of people, contrary to White Hand and nerfing Kerbane, there's a lot of things you can do to reduce the power of depths. As you've played it, what do you think would be the best balancing nerf? Whether that be taking away the break VPs, the banner, upping the points of the Balrog or something. What do you think is the most balanced FAQ that they could do up in February?
Hmm. You could up the points of the bar. I don't know if taking away the banner would really nerf it because even with the banner, they still get pieced up because they're fight two.
I think from what I've seen, especially against games against you, Andrew, I would say the best thing they could do is just say while the Balrog remains unwounded, you cannot break.
Hmm.
Because it is not the most difficult thing in the world to do one wound. It's just the issue
Hmm.
is if you're going for the 5 wounds, you have to commit like everything your list has, which then means you're going all in. If you kill the Balrog, great, you might have a chance at winning. But I mean, as I played you with my Gray company, I killed him. The issue is that then you won because I had put everything into the Balrog and you did everything else you needed to for the scenario. I just knew if I didn't kill the Balrog, I was going to die anyways because I was a small all hero list. So I had to throw everything all in and then just flank it off. And I
Hmm.
did, but then you did everything else and still won, right? So it's just, you have to be able to be, it conserves too many points in that regards. And
Yeah.
so having it where even just taking off a wound would work for
Yeah.
break because then you can't just ignore him. You still have to engage in order to get something done, right?
It's actually interesting. You said something like about if you put everything into killing it, then the rest of the army does that. It reminded me a little bit of like Witch King Gully last edition with that same type of dynamic. But so that's kind of what it was in 2025. Again, DFW here is great because we have a very fluent meta. There's a lot of lists that come and go and that there aren't. There's not really, we don't see all White Hand or all Men in the West. But into 2026 or even looking at last edition, what do y'all think are some of the best counters to the possible meta now and in the future?
Well, I know a counter to my favorite list, depths counter. I think depths counter is Fornost because yeah, you throw Arner in and he ties Balrog's 5 value, throw Glorfindel in. Boom. +1 to wound on all monsters. You could easily break that list. And then your troops are so much better and they just mop through the goblins. And that's a pretty good counter, I think, in my opinion.
I haven't tested this out with the Balrog, which I might, but mass magic sometimes can do bad because he doesn't have any might to might it. So, for example, if you ran like mass wither shamans or something, it'd be interesting to see how magic does. But yeah, if you can get a sneaky call wins on the Balrog too, that
Yeah.
might be interesting. But yeah, I think it's a good counter to depths.
Hmm.
Really, anything that can kill the Balrog, which is hard if you don't have strike.
Or
So.
I know.
or at least wound. At least get him down to
At,
five.
at
Because
least
once
get
you
a
get him
win.
down to five,
I know how to kill him so fast. And it's
Knight
the
of
list
Umbar?
that I won. No, it's the list that
Oh,
I won the first event this year with. And a list that
oh,
some people really like to bash. And that's the Rise of the Necromancer. So the way I run the Rise of the Necromancer is I will run two heroes. I will run the Witch King and I will run the Necromancer. And then you fill out with a bunch of spiders and a bunch of warg riders and then a couple bows on foot. That list is disgusting. The amount of heroes I was able to kill just through shooting 4 or 5 spider shots at them a turn and then just mopping them off the face of the earth with either just a spider over like the course of 3 turns, or the necromancer is just ridiculous. I killed like 4 Balrogs in practice games just by walking up to it, hitting it once, walking the necromancer in. With 4 dice, you're probably going to get 2 5s, and you've got 3 might to do it. That's the list to do it. And the other nice thing about that list is because it's so mobile, so fast, so efficient, you've got a good amount of shooting as well as your magic threat. Great list at kiting, so it can play in all of these other scenarios against all of these other lists quite reliably. And so I actually really rate that list. It's very fun. It is very challenging to use though.
Hmm. Yeah, I know you didn't run them, but I feel like Castellans also might be pretty good at that. I don't remember if they can take Morgul Blades this edition.
They can, yeah.
I think
The
they
issue
can.
is this edition you would want to run it without the Necromancer and just run more of like a horde style. Take 2 Castellans, at least 7 or 8 spiders, maybe the Witch King, probably the Keeper and a couple captains. I don't know about the Witch King simply because you don't have all the resurrection stuff. But like the resurrection, it still occurs. It's just harder, and
Yeah.
like at that point, you're losing more value off of his might.
Yeah, I think one list that I enjoy that might counter the Balrog well, not the 100%, but I think AOL. With the changes to Enraged Beast making them fearless, you can get your bats in, which has their fight value, and if you get either like a Warg Chief or someone else in there, even if you enrage a Warg Chief, you can get up to fight 7 if you get lucky to throw the bat, and that can neutralize it. And throwing weapons can sometimes do well against the Balrog because you can do the classic throw one model in and
Yes.
throwing weapon it to death to prevent the
Once we
combos
talk
and stuff.
about usurpers of Edoras and the White Hand and even Men of the West, frankly, like all of these other lists that are considered top tier, and go into more of like general meta counters, I will go into some lists that can counter not just like one of these lists. Like that's the issue is the Rise of the Necromancer is very good. It's just it's only of like the lists that are on here, it's only a strictly hard counter to that one
Yeah.
because the Balrog doesn't have fate, so it just takes 1 5+ or 6 if you're moving, and
Hmm.
he's just gone, right? And then Hunter Orcs, while they're not great, can absolutely mop up goblins.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I feel like especially a lot of the lists you've run that are kiting and shooting, which are not fun to play against at all, but do really well because I've heard the meta described a lot as like a rock, paper, scissors thing. I feel like most people are basically running rock or paper. It's like I have this big thing or these big heroes that are just going to destroy stuff in solid troops. Or I have a horde that can stop big heroes. But there's not really, and in the middle, which I think we'll get into throwing weapons and shooting prevent that because they got way better with the nerfs to blinding light and stuff. But if we want
Yes.
to talk about White Hand and usurpers and a counter to those, what are your thoughts as lists that do well against those with the mass Crebain that are presented? Like what's a good counter to Crebain if they don't change?
If we're talking about one single unit, there's one unit in the game that absolutely destroys them. Actually, no, there's two.
Ooh.
So any of the lists where you can get Rangers of the North with 2 attacks, they tear apart Crebain. Specifically, I'll talk more about this one before I go to the next pick. Um, I was playing a game against the White Hand, and so the classic White Hand thing to do is like throw some Crebain over, get the traps, right? And so obviously, when I run Gray Company, I like to find a piece of terrain, set up a front line, set up some sort of back so I can't get completely surrounded. So I had 3 Rangers on the back side of this one fence, protecting my flank. And then I had a kind of this anti-fly so that I couldn't get completely trapped surrounded. And then I set up my front line. So the Crebain naturally jumped to the back to just take out some one-on-ones on some of these Rangers. The next turn, I called a heroic move, won the roll off, and instead of actually just fully engaging, I ran my entire front line away from his front line, so completely disengaged. And because there had been the 1 inch separation of like backaways, he wasn't able to engage me with any of his troops. So I was able to
Mm.
put 2 Rangers of the North into each Crebain. All of the Crebain died that one turn. It was just 2 Rangers of the North, maybe a spear. They've got some might in there. They're rolling 4s to wound. These things are just dead, right?
Yeah.
When you get a good amount of attacks on a small 25 millimeter base for 25 points, they just slaughter Crebain.
Two
Um,
attack. Yeah, two attack
yeah.
models.
And now the second choice of mine, which I would say is even better, because you get the 25 millimeter base, but you have the opportunity to do 3 wounds super reliably on this one model, is the Hasharan. The
Mm,
Hasharan are amazing, especially against Crebain because they have Bane of Kings. So you're going into one of these things. They are going to be wounding you on 4s, rerolling all failed to wounds. You can put a spearman in behind him, or since you're facing a 40 millimeter base, you could probably put another 25 millimeter base in. So you can get him a spare or him and an Umbarian Corsair, and these things are just dead. Like these things consistently will wipe out a Crebain a turn.
mm.
Consistently. You take one of these guys with a couple friends and they will just walk through Crebain.
Yeah, anything that gets modifiers, so like a +1, so if
Yes.
you're down to like 2s or 3s, even if you can re-roll, ooh, so deadly. My pick, which we might get into, there's some heroes that have Mighty Blow. So
Yeah.
Knights of the White Tower, Grimbold. Ironically enough, I love Azog with the flail. I love him with the flail. He's so good. Um, that multi, like heroes that can do those big wounds
Yeah. Because then there's
can
also
do
the
stuff.
the one in Angmar, that guy. He also has it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He
Hmm.
wins them on 3s, re-rolling to wounds. No, not re-rolling. He wins them on 3s, potentially re-rolling 1s if you have Fraked, and then Mighty Blow. He's very good at
Also,
dealing with Crebain.
if we want to talk about the little trick we can use to shoot at Crebain.
Oh yeah, that one's super easy and I use this one all the time. A lot of people throw their Crebain out places, whatever. If you shoot at the model behind a Crebain, as long as you can see them, right? You take it in the way for the Crebain. If you hit the Crebain, even if you rolled a 4 to hit, you still hit the Crebain because the
Hmm.
Crebain isn't in the way, which means you still wounded as normal. So I have shot Crebain off the table with little issues because I will just pick and choose where there's in the ways. And normally before combat, a lot of them are at 3 wounds, which are manageable for most heroes that have a couple might. It's just like you can really take down their efficiency by doing shooting tricks and manipulating the shooting phase, unless a player specifically throws Kerbrang where there's just nobody around, which just limits their usability in the game.
I think one thing that's interesting, like you've done this a lot, Trey, and at first I was like, doesn't make sense. Like shooting at Crebain, even if you're just getting 6s to hit, you're like, it's not really worth it. You'll wound them a lot of the time, and a 3 wound Crebain is way like
Way
less
different.
scary
Yeah.
than a 4 wound Crebain. So
Hmm.
yeah, I
And
think that's a good
especially
counter.
early in the edition, I was playing a lot of just orcs. And so I was hitting on 5s anyway. So it was just like, it's not as much of an issue. I can see how when you have elves, you would rather just take down their numbers and be able to go into the Crebain with 3 guys rather than knock a couple wounds off the Crebain and be outnumbered in combat. So like I can see the difference with elves. I would still make an argument of half move and shoot at the Crebain because you're only hitting them on 6s. Like that's just the trick to use.
Yeah. And I think something, because at Nova, I played a 14 Kerbane list. Part of that was dice, but anti-fly zones are so important. Which, when we say anti-fly zones, we mean, because a lot of the time Kerbane are going to hop in your back line, they're going to pick on your banners, they're going to trap, which is the big thing. And what that
Hmm.
is you literally just place models in a way where you can't physically fit a model into that. Like Andrew did that perfectly against me when we played like a couple days ago. I played Man of the West with Eagles, and he put up a really good anti-fly zone. And so that's a way to prevent the Kerbane from getting those traps. Because the heroes are one thing, but also like Army of the White Hand or Usurper's troops aren't great. What really helps them is when they double their dice against your front dudes if you tag the spears behind. So there are ways of getting to them, but for 20 points, they are such
Yeah.
great value.
And then really the ultimate choice just comes down to, do you want more birds and fight for Hills tribesmen with the usurpers of Edoras, or do you want the magic with the bolts of lightning with Saruman and Grima? That's
Yeah.
pretty much your only choice. Is the Corbane are great. Which option do you want? Do you want a more hitty hero with fight for Corbane with fight for Hill tribesmen, or do you want the magic support? It's
Yeah.
that's the choice.
And I think sometimes White Hand also has a bit of advantage because you get the Oathmaker, who gives them the
Yes.
reroll ones and the Fearless, which is big. specifically that list I played at Nova, which got fourth, had no had no Saruman. It was just 14 Crebain and like a bunch of Dunlings and stuff, which was annoying. But yeah, I could have easily played that better. But I think that there are ways around that. Men of the West, which I think we really saw explode at Nova and expand further. What do you think are some of the lists that do well against that? Because it is a tricky list to take down.
Ultimately, I would say doing well against it. It's really, here's the thing, to deal with Aragorn, if he's on foot, is a completely different story. If he's the mounted Aragorn, anything with heroic defense really just slows him down. On foot, he's easier to mitigate. The issue is when he's on foot, actually 90% of the time you've got an eagle, unless you're facing me, because I will still run him with the twins, even though I haven't run in this edition, um, in Men of the West. It's just it's how do you want to mitigate the damage? More of looking at their model count, because you'll get the ones where it is Legolas, Aragorn mounted, and then just a bunch of guys. And those ones you can focus more on just plowing through their troops, focusing in on Legolas. Legolas isn't that hard to kill. The
Yeah,
issue is when they get their mounted Aragorn into your mounted hero, he shoots out Legolas shoots out your mounted hero's horse. Now your mounted hero can't strike, and
yeah.
then Aragorn gets a free
It's
turn to chop at you, right?
yeah, it's a
Those are
nasty
so
trick.
it's avoiding as long as you can are a skilled player and can avoid Aragorn with your heroes. Aragorn will munch through troops just as reliably as you will with a 120 point hero or a 140 point AMer, right? So if you can keep it just troops on troops and you have troops that will be around the same cost as the Warriors of Minas Tirith and die just as quickly, really all you're doing is trying to match him in speed and don't let the late game hit too hard when he has the free might and you don't.
Hmm.
So I would say a lot of it is any list that has high damage output will do well against Men of the West. So
Yes.
actually, high all cav is very efficient against Men of the West. The one issue with all cav against it is can you successfully hold your lines correctly to get into it properly? Because if you're
Fields
playing
of
against the
Celeborn?
Gandalf, Fields of Celeborn tears it apart. Like
Yeah.
that's it does. Fields of Celeborn is a great counter to a lot of things. If you want to take down the Shire, you take the Fields of Celeborn. If you want to take down Usurpers of Edoras, you take Fields of Celeborn. Actually, I would add Sons of Earl to that list of taking down Crebain because you
Yeah.
get 2 to 3 attacks reliably and they will just keep wounding Crebain. Yes, they won't do it in one turn every time, but they will reliably be able to put out damage. And over 2 turns, these things will slaughter Crebain. And
Yeah.
once they get into infantry, they will slaughter them too, right? So even something like a Khand will be able to tear apart a Men of the West if you do it properly. A Rideout will be able to if you approach it right, obviously. Fight 5 approaches it well, kills it well. I
Hmm.
think elves are actually a great counter this edition because then the Fight 5 bonus is great with the Men of the West. It's more so for the heroes getting a Fight 8 Aragorn a turn.
Yeah.
Um, being able to have elves that get two-handed weapons, the elven blades, Fight 5, they're not the easiest things in the world to kill either. Getting access to elven cav, right? Those things will tear it apart. So Men of the West, I think, is just a better, just it's a good list. It's balanced, and it doesn't have one like super harsh counter that just destroys it
Yeah.
every time. Like that's the issue with like say Beornings. Beornings are very good. It just won a massive tournament over in Australia. The issue is AOL eats it to pieces. Anything
Hmm.
that can pair a bat and something else, regular Moria will tear it to pieces, right? Those things can just eat it for lunch. Men of the West doesn't really have that. Against AOL, it can do fine. Against another Men of the West, it can do fine. Against AOL, it can do fine, right?
Yeah.
So I think AOL is just a better balanced list in terms of there's no strictly harsh counters depending on the build, right?
Yeah. Men of the West, that is. I think so because I played Men of the West twice. One thing that I think is useful for is you have to kill one of the heroes. So in the game that I
Yes.
won against Men of the West, because they get Dom 2, so even though they have 10 models at the end of the game, it's 20. I combated into Legolas and we blew 6 might in one combat between Legolas and Witch King, but I killed him. So I think it's important to get rid of at least one of those heroes to prevent that bubble of dominant 2. And also, it is hard, but if you can kill Aragorn, that list just kind of melts.
Yes.
But it is really hard between the Legolas support. Aragorn can go up to fight 8. He can just defense every turn anyways. So there are counters to it in some lists, but again, I think it's up to that playstyle. Andrew, you played in the Men of the West. What were the games or playstyles that you found hardest to play against when you played Men of the West?
The hardest game that I played was a stupid Shadows of Angmar that hurt my head.
That's actually one of the counters I would suggest is something, again, I hate using the excuse of magic, especially, I mean, Aragorn got a better defense to it, but here's the
Yeah,
thing, Barrow Wights eat him for lunch. If you've got 2 or 3 Barrow Wights, Aragorn is dead.
I think it was the Wither
Especially
Shamans.
The
Barrow
Wither
Wights.
Shamans were
Wither
so
Shaman's killed his
annoying.
Gwai.
Ah,
Um,
Withering a Gua here. Ugh, that's hard.
uh-huh.
But
It's anything
I
that can
didn't.
consistently put dice onto Aragorn. Aragorn eventually will fail a spell, resisting a spell,
Hmm.
right? He's got
Yeah,
3 dice plus is free. You cast 2 spells at him a turn for 3 turns, he's failing one, right? You keep throwing Barrow Wight spells at him, he's going to fail eventually. And as soon as he's paralyzed, he's basically dead, especially in a list where you've got Golobar, right?
yeah.
Um, Even the one with the guy that has the Mighty Blow and Angmar, the
Oh,
hero,
Aldrak?
Aldrak.
Yeah,
Aldrak, yes. Him and the Witch King with a Barrow Wight. That can consistently take out an Aragorn, right?
yeah.
Um, I would say White Hand. There's only like 2 builds that you could actually be able to kill the Aragorn once you magic him, because Saruman can reliably slow him down. The issue is when you don't have the Thryden Wolfsbane or the other buff guy that they put in legacies. Like
Yeah,
those are the heroes that can help take him out. It's just nobody takes them because it's better to take captains and Crabane instead.
yeah. I think that's also why the Gandalf the White Aragorn version did so well, is because between the Fortified Spirit and Gandalf getting 4 attacks in the charge, rerolling once with Pippin, both of those counter White Hand really well. So I think that's why it did well. That's why Robin did well at Articon. That's why Matt did well at Nova. But yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what the meta will be in 2026, but I think a few of us have some lists that we are probably going to run, but also lists that we think will counter some of the metas. So if we want to, each of y'all want to maybe give 1 or 2 of the lists that you are excited to take that you think might do well against some of these type of lists.
Okay. I'll start off with the first one. So I would say the first one that I've been super excited about painting up myself is my Umbar. So Umbar to me is the perfect counter to just about every list in the game. So you get at 700 about 42 models. At 750, which is currently what I've been playing around, you get 43 because at 750 you just add a Haradrim Chieftain. Because at 700 I do not have Heroic March. At 700 I take 3 Hasharin, Delgamar, and Dalamir. The reason is because Hasharin are so crazy good.
Those
Like
those throwing
so good.
weapons are underrated, bro. With
Those
Bandit Kings and the throwing weapons. I didn't know
yes.
that. I was like, "Oh, Bandit Kings is nice." And then you were like, "Yeah, they get it on throwing weapons." And I was like, "What?"
Yep. And the biggest thing is you want at least 2 Hasharin in the list as well as Dalamir because they really do pay dividends when you have multiple. And when you
Hmm.
have 3 Hasharin, Delgamar, and Dalamir, that's 5 3 attack heroes. Yes, 4 of them are fight 5. So against Lothlorien, Lothlorien is the only list that can potentially slow this down. And Lothlorien, you have to face off against all of these throwing weapons because
Yeah.
you take your 33% Corsairs with light shields and throwing daggers, 33% Haradrim bows, and 33% Haradrim spears. Because then you get good numbers, you get 5 very good heroes. You've got Delgamar to call your moves, you've got Dalamir to save his might for whenever he needs it, and you've got your Hasharans to use a might on a random dice roll, a clutch dice, or a heroic defense if needed. The best thing about these is they can't be trapped while standing, so they're very reliable on staying alive, even while being defense 4. They're defense 4, 2 wounds, and 3 fate. So
Hmm.
they're actually they can take a hit,
Yeah.
but they just have so much damage output. And when you put their blowpipes, their throwing weapons, all of your heroes' throwing weapons into perspective with the what, like 14 throwing weapons you get in the list naturally, anyways, it adds up very quickly. Specifically once you get into combat, because heroes are scared of Hasharin. Hasharin will kill just about any hero, and they don't even need a heroic strike to do it. One hero fails a dice roll against a Hasharin, they've got backstabbers naturally, Bane of Kings naturally. So if they can get a trap on a hero is dead. You've got 6 dice rerolling wounds +1 to wound. It'll kill you.
Oh,
Um, and then you get just a ton of models. You can shoot out your guys in combat with their heroes. So that's how you deal with stuff like the Balrog. You don't need to kill it. You just need to throw your Hasharin into troops, reliably kill 2 troops a turn into their captains, kill their captains, throw regular troops into the Balrog, and shoot it out the troops.
yeah.
Even hitting on 5s on the Balrog, you're reliably shooting them out with just a few shots, right? And then against this like Men of the West, you do the same thing. You throw your Hasharin into his troops. You throw a base guy into Aragorn, into Gandalf, into Gwaihir, whoever you're facing, and just shoot them out. The other perk of that is you will regularly just get chip damage off on their heroes, which means you're getting your leader wounds still. You're slowing them down. You could potentially kill them depending on their defense values, right? So you can really do damage with that. And then you've got a sneaky little factor of just Delgamar is actually very good for a captain level hero that
Hmm.
has 3 attacks, fight 5. He's got a 3+ shoot value with his throwing weapons. Like he's good. He calls the heroic moves you need. He gets into combat, kills stuff very reliably. It's just you've got everything you need in that list.
Yeah.
And then you get a good amount of bodies too, which is great this edition. And then you get the stock unseen to help mitigate bow fire on your low defense.
Yeah. That Delgamir, whatever, Delgamir banner is actually super good. But also that light armor and light shields is actually kind of underrated. So no,
Yeah.
it's a good pick. I've played against it. It's nasty. It's super competitive. Corsairs obviously were better last edition, but I feel like again they're quite underrated because a lot of armies aren't 100% equipped to deal with the throwing weapons or the
Yeah.
shooting. We're just 4 heroes. Sure, if you have
Yeah.
Saruman, you can shut down one of those a turn, or if you have a Witch King, you can shut one of those down a turn. But it's hard to shut down 4 heroes at once that can all do damage pretty well. So
Okay, so like my army pick is Fords of Eisen because I ran Kingdom of Rohan against Trey's Khan, and like Theodred one shot one chariot and then one shot the king, and like he has so much killing power, and I actually love him. And then also they have that some like special rules. I also love Elfhelm because he's really good with his throwing weapons, and he has heroic defense, so he can reliably stop a hero if you need to. Of course, he only has 2 might now since the change, but still, he's not bad. And then you can take Grimbold and then get your strength for Rohan Warriors. And last edition, Grimbold was one of my favorite heroes. I just love Grimbold. And so yeah, I think I'll probably be running Forza Island. I don't know if it counters anything in the meta, but I really don't care. I run what I like. I really
yeah,
don't anything.
I think Grimble does well against the Kerbane, and I think it can have a very kiting list, which does well, and also it has some punch, which can do really well as well.
Yeah.
I would say it's a very, very good counter because, as Michael said, Grimbold is actually a very good counter. Elfhelm is super solid because he has that heroic defense along with that really nasty throwing weapon that has all the rerolls that the Hasharan do as well. He's also got a lot of more hitting power now with the 3 attacks base, which is very fun. More than that, it's just this edition, the list got better because now the Cav treat Theodred as the leader so that they get that fight 4 or fight 5 buff on the charge, which is very, very good. And then additionally, you get fearless. You get the bodyguard or swarm protector for your leader there. And then when you get back, if you break, you get dominant too. So pretty
Mhm.
much if you break, you get back to your starting number of models, which is just great. So it's just like it's got a lot of things. And then you get a lot of bodies that have some good value troops in there.
Yeah, it out hordes all other hordes because all hordes died, but this one dies and it still has the same number of models, and you're like, what? So yeah, Andrew, that game against Khan, have you played it in anything else, or do you want to walk us through that game and some of the strategies you used?
Well, that game against Khan, I think my strategy was do not get run over by chariots. That was basically my strategy. And it kind of, I lost the game because I think it was Recon and he got more models off
Ooh,
because
recon.
Amber, I don't know, Amber he was not reliably doing anything on one side. They held, he one shot the chariot, then one shot the king right after that. And
I really
then,
like AMR as your pick on the left flank.
yeah, uh, Amber, he's disappointed me many times this new
Because you
edition.
can definitely take AMR and Fords of Eisen.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't play Forza
But
Horizon
yeah,
though.
yeah, you were playing Kingdom
I
of
play
Rohan,
Kingdom
sorry.
Row.
That was my mistake.
And then, I mean, the annoying thing is Theodred has to charge, but if you make it so that, or like if you move everybody first or block him in so he can't charge, then you can protect him, even though you do mitigate the amount of killing that you can do because he's a really big hero. But I like that. Another list I'm gonna run is Barad-dûr. I need to try out Sauron. I've only run him once. I need to run him again. It was really fun running him that one time.
Yeah. He has the same rule as the Balrog with the break thingy, but
Hmm.
yeah. And he's much, much harder to kill. I think I'm gonna take one of my picks here, and I think one thing that counters it well, the one list that I kind of want to play but I'm restricted to is Arnor. Arnor was obviously fantastic last edition. I think it won Articon the year before this new edition. I might be
Yeah.
wrong on that. But it's solid because it is a tank. Like killing those troops with 5-up saves is really hard. But with the addition of whatever the ranger hero's name is, giving the Arnor keyword to the rangers, you can run a lot of ranger lists and get 4-up saves on all those rangers. You can get 4-up saves on your D7 captains. So one build I'm looking to is that captains. Those things can stall out the big bruisey heroes that can be run like a Balrog or Men of the West. It does really well against. It does well against hordes because hordes are really hard to kill, and they are fight 4, which does give them either that tying or higher against some hordes. Um, Also, the fact that Melbeth now has foresight points as well is very, very good. And Arvidui gives the fearless bubble. I think where it struggles a bit is in terms of magic because Melbeth's thing is now active, so you just transfix him. His rule doesn't apply anymore as much. So I actually beat Angmar doing that with my AOL. I just transfixed him. Um, so it does well against most things. Magic is somewhat a struggle. But I enjoy Arnor. I think the reason we don't see it as much here in the DFW area is just because those models are so stupid to buy. They're so expensive.
Mhm.
Which is probably what I'll use proxies or something around that. But I think it's an interesting choice because it's balanced, but it counters heroes and hordes pretty well. If Trey, you want to go on to your second pick.
Okay. For a second pick, ooh, I mean, I've got a lot of lists. Um, my top pick for this, I haven't even shared yet, and I'm not going to share yet. I will share that one after Adepticon, with the
Ooh,
Masters coming
spoiler.
out, but it will come out eventually. Currently, I would say two lists in between. Okay, I'll go with the Wolves of Isengard. I think the Wolves of Isengard are very good. You get a lot of cheap access to Heroic March, so they're very, very, very quick. Because every single hero other than your shamans get Heroic March, which is very good value. More so than that, at pretty much any points value, you're going to have the standard number that every other list in the game has, but all cap. The kicker is this edition, Sharku is really good. He's the same as he was last edition in points, other than like 5 points, whatever. It's like, who cares? But now he gets access to free hurt combats like he did last edition, but he gets access to 4 attacks and fight 5 on the charge. So he is a big hitter. And he has Direct
Ooh.
Strike, which is just a nice tool to have.
Mhm.
So now he can reliably cut through these Gondorian lines like he couldn't last edition, right? His heroic combats have much more value now. And I would say more than that is just you get so much cav, and they get their cav bonuses against opposing cav, which is very, very good.
Mhm.
And then you get like your scout bonuses and stuff, which are good. They're good little fun little perks. And Maelstrom of battle scenarios, they are very good.
Cool.
And then I would just say you just get a lot of these strength 4 cav that have throwing weapons or bows. And then you get the secret weapon, which is the shaman. So I was playing this a lot in the first half of the edition before the shaman came into play. And the only weakness that I could say and could find was if you broke, it's tough. Partially is because my first game ever in a tournament, I broke by one model. The next turn, two of my captains fled on full stats on double ones,
Mhm.
and then 11 Ward Riders fled. I still won that game, but it was instead of a good old major victory, a very, very tight minor win by one victory point. So the shaman helps fix that because Fury covers heroes, troops alike, all of the Ward Riders. Um, and then the other tool it brings, I always bring two shamans because Enrage Beast fixes the other
Mhm.
issue in that if you're fighting those compact lists like Men of the West that have that good fight value, being able to get to that fight 5 with 3 attacks at strength 6 tears right through it. Again, you won't be able to do that with all of them or consistently. It's just like you get a few turns of that, they will deal damage and they will pay dividends in the long run.
Yeah. I think kind of going back to what we talked at the beginning, mobile hordes are
Yes.
really good. It is so good. Especially like that surprise rule doesn't seem too good, but it can be sneaky in some objective plays. Maelstrom, it's a pain to play against. Um, yeah, it's super solid all around. I didn't really rate it, and then like I read through their rules and I was like, oh, this is nasty. So yeah, cavalry does well and shooting, especially with you can get a lot of throwing weapons in that list as well. Um, but Andrew, you kind of talked about Barad-dûr, but you also ran a list in April that we kind of talked about a little bit. But do you want to go a bit more into Fornost for us?
Oh yeah, Fornos. I'm gonna be running that one too. I love it. Especially, I always I loved Glorfindel since he came out, even though last edition he couldn't really kill, but now he's just so good. Now he can two-hand, and if the two-handing, that I think that was one of the big things that I
Hmm.
actually really liked, is that if you roll a 6 now with two-hand, it doesn't go down to a 5, which makes it so much better to two-hand. And then against monsters, if he two-hands, then he gets +2 to wound. Like, he can deal lots of damage to monsters very quickly. And then, of course, you have Erner. And with Erner being your leader, that means you can throw Glorfindel out. And yes, if he dies, it's a bad thing, but you're not losing VPs when he dies. Of course, you're losing 200-point hero, but like, you're not losing VPs when he dies, which makes it good. Aener actually can kill a lot too, especially with his lance. When he charges in with his lance knockdown. Actually, I think I played Usurpers of Edoras first game when I first played Fornos. And Aener was just one-shotting Creebane, actually. It was actually insane. He one-shot 2 Creebane. It was it was crazy. And then of course Círdan. He calls when, knocks the person over, and if Aaron or Glorfindel in there, they're probably dead.
Mm.
Like it's I really like it. And then the troops are so good too. You got your Gondorians, and then you put your elves with spears behind them, so you get that 5/5 in the combat. Just then you can stall for days. And then even having elven shooting, I like it a lot.
Yeah. And I think one thing that served dividends when you ran it was a ranger with a warband of hobbits. You don't want to max the
Oh,
hobbits too much,
That
but
is, that
it
is one of
boosts
the
up the numbers so nicely.
hmm
So yeah, and there's so many tricks you can do with call wins and stuff. And the fact both heroes, everyone in that list gets resistant to magic too,
Oh
helps.
yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that rule.
Uh, See, for my pick, I would have gone AOL, but according to Longshanks, it has the best win rate, so I guess it's technically the meta. But I'm gonna go with one similar that I enjoy. It's not Assault on Lothlorien, it's Lothlorien itself, which I think is very strong. And there's two ways you can run it. I've experimented more with the Pajama Elves version because the fact that you get so many throwing weapons and bows under Blinding Light with Galadriel, but then you get Elven Cloaks. Elven Cloaks are so good. The -1 to hit is very, very nice, despite the fact that you get Stalk Unseen. So you can be on an objective and be really good. Sentinels in that list are very underrated. I kind of want to run a list with like four of them and just throw the 3-inch terror bubble and just sit there with terrifying elves with throwing weapons is very good. You can either run it with Galadriel, Celeborn, Howlier, which I've run before, or you can run a more spam version where you can get up to like 40 models at 700 with fight 5 elves and a ton of shooting, which is super strong. It does well against heroes because you can shut down heroes either with your fight 6 and the pikemen, or with just the reliability of double casters, or honestly, you can just throw Galadriel or Celeborn have the mirror behind them. They could call a defense. They can stall out heroes really well. They grind super well against any other type of troop. They take on hordes really well. They're pretty fast and mobile as well. So really, their hardest weakness is like if there's something they need to kill, like an Aragorn picks up the heirloom, that's where it struggles, is where it needs to kill something. It doesn't have a big beat stick hero. But with Kelborn's enchanted blades, you can like throw in a cavalry and give it enchanted blades, and that's actually kind of
Hmm.
scary because you can. I actually think the cavalry lost their two-hand, but you can also two-hand with the elves with the +1 from Celeborn. It's a very versatile list, and I really like it, and it does counter some of the other shooting lists as well. So those are some of our picks to counter the meta. Some of those you might see us run in tournaments, others we might run other types of lists. Ooh. But I think we'll get to recapping here. I want to hear overall your thoughts about the meta slash edition in 1 year, and then Trey and I will talk about all the competition that we're doing a little bit later. So,
In ter Oh, Andrew, go.
Oh, um, I really don't know. I haven't played enough. I'm not gonna lie. I haven't played enough to talk about the meta or anything. Especially, I don't really think DFW runs a lot of meta stuff. I
Not
think,
specifically.
yeah.
Um, in terms of what I think the meta is going to be, I don't. I think Men of the West will continue to be that resurging meta pick. Simply because of the way it plays. I do also think we didn't really talk about it today, but I have a feeling some point future we will talk about it a little bit more in depth. The Shire. I don't think the Shire is getting talked about enough to get a big nerf. And I think the Shire is a big contender.
yeah.
So I think the Shire, as more people are gaining access to hobbits or even just proxies for hobbits, I think we're going to see the Shire start to pop up more and more. Because you saw one of them showed up to Nova. That one went undefeated. With granted, he was a good player. He was top 20
Yeah.
in the New England League, but he was barely top 20 in the New England League, and he went undefeated. He was one of four players to go undefeated, and he took the Shire. It is a very, very good list.
Yeah.
And it talks a lot, like counters what the addition is of a lot of big heroes. So I think we're going to see a lot of the Shire, a lot of Men of the West, and hot take, maybe not so much of a hot take, a lot of Uglex Scouts, because Uglex Scouts is that
Mm,
mobile horde that gets access to lots of the +1, +2 to wound, all of that
yeah.
stuff.
I think we in future episodes will talk more about Ugly Scouts, but they're so good and they're very versatile at points. Yeah, the Shire in the hands of a good player, like I think Alisher has not lost with Hobbits yet.
He
Maybe
lost one game.
one
He
game.
did lose. He lost on a tournament game
But
to White Hand.
oh, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, those lists in meta are good. I'm gonna second that. And I think what's hard for a lot of competitive players is they're gonna have to get used to like running not competitive lists, because there are so many fun lists out there. Like there was one Andrew and I were looking at a couple days ago. The Expedition to the East
I
looks
love
so
that list.
fun,
I love
and
that
no one's
list.
talking about it. I hate it because it has hatred Eastern links, but um, yeah, I think it'll be super cool. In terms of like the meta for 26, I don't know if we'll get a supplement. I think it's an interesting discussion to have. I think a lot of people want it, but I don't think we will. And just to wish list for a moment, one supplement that I really want that I think would be super cool would be a Last Alliance
Yeah,
supplement with
they need to complete Numenor.
new plastic orcs. Imagine new plastic orcs and Numenor and Rivendell. You could do something similar to Arnor where you give Numenor Cav, you add a Nerion. The hard thing I think with supplements is we don't know how that's going to interact with army list building. Because last edition was, okay, you just apply it here. Here's a legendary legion. Because everything's a legendary legion, how does adding models to existing lists work?
It will probably be like the Legacies of Middle Earth or like the Armies of Middle Earth, where there will be the little clause or the page in the back of the book that
Yeah,
says these models are in this list now. The issue is then it gets super confusing. In order to run one list, you need 4 books that contain all you need. So it's like
yeah.
that's where the online segments are going to be thriving. The physical books are not going to be doing well this edition.
Yeah, I think that's something that will, if a supplement comes out, will change the meta because if there is a good competitive list, I think a lot of competitive players will be like, "Oh, I want to try something new with new profiles," and we'll see that run a lot more. But it'll be exciting. I think all of us are gonna try and attend more tournaments. Trey and I are
Mhm.
flying up to Adepticon, so that should be fun. But to close it out, we have a challenge between Trey and I. More of a friendly competition, but if y'all want to participate, you can as well. Because Trey and I are leaving for college in August, and so I have so many unpainted models. And so our goal is to see how many models that we have to have. Like, we want to paint them well because we're going to use them, but we also need them based. And however many models we can paint until August. And each month, whenever we do a podcast, we will update
Give
that as well.
updates.
Unfortunately, Trey has like hundreds of hobbits he can paint, and I'm over here like painting
The
these
issue
decent
is
models.
the issue is that I just finished like a dozen of them, so those don't count.
Yeah, it starts from now, January
Yes.
8th. That's when we're starting. So, yeah, I need to buy a horde army. No. How much does the Moonboat count?
Yeah, I would say they count towards their dominance as well. So
Ooh, wait.
Moonmont counts as 10. I mean, here's the thing, you're putting it goes down to the amount of like work putting
Does
into it. So
so
Hey,
is
like
Michael, buy
dominance
buy like 15 Balrogs. I got
dominance in their
promise.
list? Like, would if Andrew painted a bunch of Rohan
dominance according to the
profile?
according to the profile itself.
Yeah.
So like your
Okay.
generals count painting a Witch King doesn't count as 3, but
Yeah,
painting
yeah.
a monster counts as 3 if they have dominant 3.
Yeah.
Like
I think
I
that'll
would
be
say that
fun.
makes sense.
And that's our challenge to see. Trey batch paints much better than I do, but this is my challenge to myself and him. So if you want to participate, please do that as well. Obviously, share, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. If these podcasts we're trying to get them out hopefully weekly, and if we get support, we can upgrade our stuff and get out better quality faster. So this has been the first pilot episode of the Mines of Moria. Thank you for listening and have a great rest of your day. Bye.